Welcome guys to our AthenaX live stream. Today I'm really honored and happy to have Alex from Katana here to join us for a session. And Alex, welcome. How are you?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so for our audience, quick intro first. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, hey, so Alex, the DeFi systems lead at Katana, which basically means I'm responsible for token design, mechanism design, as well as ecosystem design on Katana. So basically, wherever there is the cat token, wherever there is structural value flows on Katana, I'm like the Katana flywheel. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm working typically on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Then speaking about like you, let's talk a little bit about the background here, right? You worked 7 years in traditional fintech. What made you leave that and jump into DeFi?
Yeah, so I was a PM in Web2, fintech and payments, for many years. And I kind of been like hearing some rumblings about DeFi, more and more around DeFi summer. And then I kind of really dug into it. And there just became a point where it was like, okay, so this is not just on-chain games. This is actually, okay, admittedly it was on-chain games, but there was actually something substantial there. So something clicked and I realized that, well, I'm working on the past when I could be working on the future. That was when I just made the decision to jump into Web3 full time.
Right. I was really, when we had a call, you were saying like, why don't I work in the future? I'm going to work there. That was really nice one. So then what's your DeFi journey then? Yeah,
so it started, well, it always starts with getting rugged, right? So like, I'm just playing on chain. I'm like using these random protocols with these crazy APYs, losing money left and right. Also, we make money, we lose money. That's DeFi. But through that process, and I'm like trying to understand what's actually going on behind the scenes. You read the docs, you try to work out what's going on. Actually, for every rug or for every like loss of capital, I do find that one gets upgrades. So yeah, it started with that, playing around, and then like I mentioned, I moved in from Web2 to Web3, and basically kind of like working as a PM in Web3. Kind of just lightly touching DeFi. It was actually at a product lab where I was doing, product work. And we did a bunch of things like governance tooling, NFT stuff, some DeFi stuff, very broad. Eventually, that product lab would become Mantle, the chain. However, at Mantle, I'd always had this like desire to design tokens and mechanisms. And indeed, it was what I was doing in my spare time, trying to I would think about like use a protocol and I think, this feels a bit capital inefficient. I feel like we can make some upgrades here. Why don't they design a token like this? So I was already kind of doing this stuff and looking for opportunity to basically do that professionally. And those opportunities were not really available at Mantle. So I eventually moved on to a DeFi protocol where I could get more hands-on into DeFi stuff, designing the mechanisms, the tokens, the value flows between them, as well as like liquidity shaping, getting really deep into V3 and understanding the beast and magic that is Uni V3. And that was also doing as a product manager. So, but when you're a product manager, only part of your job is this kind of like token design, mechanism design, fun bit. So when I saw this role at Polygon pop up, it was like full-time mechanism design. So for me, that's like full-time, the best bit of Web3 product, but just it's your entire job. So, I was at Polygon for some time, basically helping projects design their tokens, tokenomics, and protocol upgrades. And then, when the Katana incubation kicked off, it was kind of a natural fit that I would move over to Katana as the mechanism designer, flywheel designer, token designer over there as well. Yeah.
So then you made the step again from Polygon to Katana. Tell me about Katana. What is it? What problem is Katana solving?
Yeah, so Katana is a DeFi chain by its construction. So you look at the ecosystem today and there are many chains out there and they all have DeFi on them, right? But it's more like incidental DeFi. It's like a general purpose chain that happens to have DeFi on it, not a chain which is designed for DeFi that has DeFi on it. So just right off the bat, like this is a differentiation point for Katana. And Katana manifests this design through some of its mechanisms, the way that it handles or the way that it integrates the Vault Bridge, which is a technology from Polygon, which basically funds a perpetual liquidity mining campaign. So basically what we do is USDC, USDT, WETH, and Wrapped Bitcoin in the Katana bridge are deployed into Morpho on L1, earning yield. That yield is collected by the chain and then distributed back into the ecosystem as incentives. So if you go to Katana today, you'll see for various DeFi activities, you get paid in USDC and ETH for using DeFi. And this is not like VC money, or it's not like, a limited pool of funds. It's just perpetual liquidity mining funded from lending yield from the L1. So we do this, and this is like kind of how we think about sustainability, right? Like typically every chain, they would have a token, they emit into oblivion. The TVL graph goes up and it goes down as soon as the emissions dry up. Yeah, this doesn't really work for us. We're in it for the long haul, right? So sustainability is one of the core problems we're solving via some of our mechanisms.
That's super interesting. So basically, the sustainability depends on the whole. Like if I just look at this, like we have so many layer twos in the ecosystem. What make Katana like different and outstanding compared to the rest?
Yeah, for sure. So basically everyone in the Katana team is like pure DeFi. Like everyone is like a degen. Everyone has been in it for hardcore DeFi. Everyone like really knows their stuff. So when we were like designing the chain, we really thought about like, how can we make this really optimized for DeFi? And so I mentioned the Vault Bridge. This is one. We have liquidity mining, which everyone in DeFi knows and loves, but we fund it sustainably. We also have this concept called core apps, which is basically just like, so every chain, they typically have like, I don't know, 2 to 3 dexes, 2 to 3 lending protocols. Inside these dexes, there are typically the same liquidity pools. Inside the lending protocols, there are typically the same lending markets. Now, this is just by definition inefficient. Because if I have 2 dexes that both have USDC and ETH liquidity pools with a few fee tiers each, this is fragmenting liquidity between the protocols. Now, as a chain that wants to optimize for deep liquidity, this doesn't actually make any sense, because your users are going to have to basically use an aggregator if they want to get the best price execution. They'll aggregate between the 2 underlying dexes. And the foundation, if they want to bootstrap the dexes, have to basically give tokens to both the dexes, which is also a waste of money if you could just incentivize one with one liquidity pool and double the depth. So we have core apps. We have 1 DEX, we have 1 lending protocol, 1 perps protocol, 1 launchpad. And this is for capital efficiency. This means that the chain itself can reduce the spend, and the protocols themselves can also reduce the spend. So rather than the protocols that would compete and emit tokens to compete with each other for the same liquidity, we're just looking at bringing in net new liquidity into the same protocols. It's much more collaborative. This is one thing. Another thing is that you'll see that on L2s, they all have like some kind of network token, but rarely does the network token do anything, right? Like, well, okay. It has governance, quote unquote governance, so this kind of stuff, right? But none of them really like provide exposure to the ecosystem in any kind of like clean way. So at Katana, we decided to do something like completely novel and pure DeFi, which is a network token that is a VE33 token that basically captures revenues from the applications on Katana, which means that, so it's got, if for those that don't know, VE33, it's basically some kind of mechanism design built on top of the initial VE-CRV design. And we see it today. The best implementation of what we see today is Aerodrome. This is where you basically lock a token, emit to some liquidity pools, the trading fees from the pools go to the token holders, and it's that kind of virtual cycle aligning participants. So Katana does this, but at the chain level, meaning the token holders, the CAT token holders, can basically emit tokens to various destinations, not just DEX pools. And wherever they emit, they will receive fees, yield, right? Which means that the CAT token's revenue, or the yield of the CAT token, is not funded from staking rewards or like anything like that. It's funded from application revenues. It's real yield by definition. And, we think it's pretty cool. We will launch this in early next year, and we will start with just 1 venue. We will have the CAT token emitting CAT and receiving fees from the DEX, and eventually we will add on more and more venues. We have quite a solid roadmap lined up. Another thing Katana does is it has chain-owned liquidity. Okay, so we are heavily inspired, right, by Olympus. So back in 2021, everyone was doing liquidity mining in a very unsustainable way. Basically, a protocol needs to bootstrap their system. They emit a bunch of tokens. They even need to emit to their own liquidity pools. People can get the token, etc. But eventually the token just goes down because the supply far outweighed the demand. So Olympus comes along. They decide to sell their token instead for LP tokens. They then get to hold the LP tokens. They get to own the liquidity. Now, this was like, of course, very hyped back then, and people have forgotten about Olympus today. But Olympus is still like got one of the largest treasuries in DeFi, and they're still building.
Really?
Yeah, they're still building. They're still doing stuff because they have like a massive treasury which they built up from that mechanism. And it's super impressive. It's years and years later now, right? That's over $100 million. Yeah. They just released a new product, actually, these convertible deposits. It's cool stuff. So Katana, inspired by this, we basically take a sequence of fees from the chain and we use it to buy LP tokens. And we buy them in LP tokens that are most expensive to incentivize. So right now, the chain holds mostly ETH USDC LP tokens. And it holds many tokens. This is the core pair we're trying to build up now, because this volatile pair is very expensive to incentivize typically. So the more we buy now, the less we have to spend for that liquidity depth over time. So it's a bet on like the long term of the chain, which means that the chain basically provides liquidity guarantees for its users, regardless of market conditions. You know, if you're in a volatile AMM, the market dumps, maybe the other LPs go out of range, and then they leave. The liquidity dries up. But the chain, we're not going to leave. We're just going to sit there. We're going to rebalance. We're going to always provide liquidity for our users. It's not about a profitable V3 position. It's about liquidity guarantees and a functioning DeFi ecosystem. So we do that. And then also, yes, the Vault Bridge, which I managed, which I mentioned before. So yeah, a bunch of stuff that Katana does.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Like today, it's pretty important for Ethereum ecosystem, the Fusaka upgrade. What does that upgrade affect Katana? Is there anything that helps or any?
Yeah, it has a small effect on Katana. It basically means that the cost to post data to Ethereum is now reduced, which is a nice benefit. It doesn't have much meaningful impact on the Katana flywheel, the things that I mentioned previously, but hey, it's nice. We have a lessened cost now. So yeah.
Right. So then just coming back from Katana and tokenomics and what you do. So you build the whole tokenomics for Katana from scratch, ground zero. And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, what is tokenomics?
Yeah, so basically, tokenomics is a kind of new field, which is the combination of many different things, like macroeconomics, monetary policy, incentive design, behavioral economics, philosophy, also ethics, to name a few, computer science, of course, and we kind of synthesize these things into what will become the tokens design. That is its supply and demand mechanics.
Right. Then basically, why is this so important for DeFi projects?
Well, well-designed tokenomics basically provides a way for projects to bootstrap their protocol, fund their operations sustainably, and return value back to their project supporters. So yeah, it's we see this executed. Rarely is it executed well, right? But this is kind of the dream. Well-designed tokenomics should provide these things to the project and its holders.
So then when you designing the tokenomics for Katana, what were the first principles you wrote down? Like what was the whole guideline?
Yeah, for sure. So we're just seeing like very few things are designed with sustainability in mind, right? The graphs always up and to the right and then down and to the right. That's just like up and then down. It's sadly. And we were trying to solve this with sustainability built into the tokenomics from day one. So that was a core design principle for us. Another one was basically rewarding activity over passivity, meaning reward token holders, Katana chain users, for being active rather than being passive. And then finally, making it simple and user-friendly. And like, this is like when I'm like putting on my product manager hat back on again and thinking about like the chain, the token, the ecosystem as like a product itself, and thinking about the whole experience from a user perspective, and basically making it simple to interact with the token and the chain. And, when we say we want to reward activity, we don't want to make it too difficult to be active, right? So we're going to make that as easy as possible as well. So just like, some things that we were thinking about there.
And coming from the, after like you have the whole overall principles based on that, and then you have designed, there are 3 different tokens, right? vKAT, vKAT, and avKAT. Like from the principle and then to the real implementation right now, can you walk me the process? How did you make that happen?
Yeah, definitely. So part of a good product is basically all of a good product is giving users what they want, right? So we designed these 3 tokens they're basically, it's basically one base token that is cat. And this is a very simple token. It is purely an emissions token, farm token, right? This is because we in DeFi, if we want to farm, we don't want it to be complicated. We just want to provide liquidity, get paid for doing so. Very simple, right? But if you only do that, token eventually goes down, as we've seen. So we want to give the farmers what they want, but at the same time, provide sustainability. So what we do is we make the token useful. And that use is in vKAT. So a user, a farmer, can take their cat, they can lock it for vKAT, and they can then direct emissions into the DeFi ecosystem. For example, a DEX pool. And just like with other VE33 systems, when you direct the tokens to a DEX pool, you then receive the fees. Therefore, the vKAT has yield. Now, this is that bit I was saying about active versus passive, right? So a user here is being active. They're selecting a pool to vote for, and they are then receiving fees. But we want to make it easy for the user. So the vKAT has an kind of auto revoter, which is, as far as I understand, quite a new system where if I say I want to put 50% of my votes towards ETH USDC and 50% towards ETH BTC, WBTC, I vote once and it will just roll over every epoch. And again, with making it simple for the user, simple for the farmer, the fees that the user would receive would then be paid in USDC, ETH, and BTC. But because those are the LP fees, right? But maybe the vKAT holder wants to actually only receive USDC, or only wants to receive ETH, or only wants to receive USDT, or I don't know, some other token. They can actually configure that in the vKAT system. So let's say that a vKAT holder has voted for 10 different pools, therefore they're receiving maybe 15 different fee tokens. They can choose to have them all settled into, for example, stables or BTC. And it's kind of like a set and forget BTC printer then, which I think it's pretty cool, right? They're being active and then they're getting paid in the token that they wish. And then avKAT, basically, the avKAT is a liquid wrapper for vKAT. So we talked about the 2 different configurations of vKAT, that is where you vote and what token you receive your yield in. What avKAT does is set the configuration for vKAT to vote for pools that will provide the most yield for the vKAT holder and to return all of that yield back in CAT. And that wraps it up into avKAT. So it's like an auto-compounding vKAT position, which is fully liquid, ERC20. You can use it anywhere across the ecosystem. What this means is you now have a yield-bearing version of CAT, which is usable as collateral in the ecosystem. You could borrow against it. You can mint stables against it. It's like you would use for any other yield-bearing token in DeFi. We're under the hood. It's voting and participating in the vKAT flywheel. So automatically, yeah.
So it's another token that can benefit the users to gain more rewards or incentivize and everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Then we talked a lot about how users get in their incentives and profits. How does Katana make money? Where does those money go?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, great question. Most chains don't make money, right? Or don't make much money. But Katana makes money via sequencer fees, right? And we just take these sequencer fees and we take any net sequencer fees and we use them to buy LP tokens for chain on liquidity.
Okay.
Also the Vault Bridge. So we have our chain revenue. And we've already made like many millions of dollars in revenue from the Vault Bridge. The run rate is actually. Honestly, like the Vault Bridge is a very powerful mechanism. It's how we fund all our liquidity mining, as I mentioned. So
did you design that? Did you design the Vault Bridge?
I did not. No, this is it came out of Polygon. Yeah, the Vault Bridge itself is a Polygon thing. The value flows and how we structure them, that's more of a Katana specific thing. So the Vault Bridge basically provides revenue for the chain, but today the chain just basically pumps it all back into the ecosystem as incentives. There may come a time where the chain will take some off the table, but it's not really necessary at this stage. We want to just keep incentivizing, keep growing the ecosystem.
Wow, yeah, that's yeah, you're like pretty deep into this type of thing, and I wonder, other than the wall bridge and other than the token you design, I want to talk a little bit about the TVL, because I think Katana introduced a new benchmark for measuring the DeFi capital efficiency. You called it Productive TVL. What is it?
Yeah, so Productive TVL is so basically, like, if you go to whatever kind of L2 metrics online, you often see like TVL. This is the measure of how many assets are held on the chain. But this doesn't actually tell you anything about how useful the chain is, because that metric could just be users having bridged ETH and just having it sit there in the L2. That ETH in someone's wallet is not usable by the DeFi ecosystem, right? Yeah. So Katana measures itself by how much TVL is deployed into DeFi, because that TVL is then available for the ecosystem, whether as like to be
keep it running.
Exactly. This is how we measure our success, and this is actually how we kind of think about building the ecosystem. It's, when you have more liquidity deployed into DeFi, it means that, of course, more liquidity can be used, and therefore more fees are then distributed to all the participants for the various activities. So yeah, this is Productive TVL.
Yeah, then combining, like, from this TVL, I was just wondering, like, is Katana a safe spot for institutional yields?
Definitely. We have many institutions deployed today with quite large sums.
Can you elaborate more? Like, is there anything you could intro? What's the range, the portfolio in the institution collaboration right now with Katana?
You mean like how much of the TVL on Katana is from institutions? Or
yeah. If there's a range about it.
Yeah, I would say it would be probably 50%, something like this.
And that's pretty impressive. Like, I was just like, from your point of view, by designing all this and everything, right? What's the most, like you mentioned sustainability a lot, and to make the chain sustainable, and then to design the things that constantly get the chain profit, to get the users have profit. What's the bad tokenomic patterns you've seen from last cycles that you knew, and you want to recommend any founders that they should not make those mistakes?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, we've seen way too many times over too much period of time that most projects, or many projects, unfortunately think way too much about the supply mechanics, and demand mechanics are just an afterthought. Like, if you go to the docs of any protocol or any kind of random protocol, you would see that tokenomics description there is basically just the supply. But then it's like, well, why should I hold the token? And you might go to that section. It's just like, oh, quote unquote, stake it and you'll receive emissions. But this is a trap, actually. More often than not, this is a trap. It's basically the project is emitting to that token locker. It's paying users to not sell the token so that the team can sell. So this is like it should be, I know, it should be avoided. And this is why I mentioned like ethics as part of like good tokenomics, because like, unfortunately, there is a lot of like information asymmetry, as well as like a kind of many teams know more than their users in terms of like how these kind of mechanisms work, like economically, and they use that to the user's advantage. They would extract instead of actually providing value. So I would say that's bad tokenomics.
That was a good advice. Honestly, I feel like we just seen too many repetitive, like the way they design is basically the same, copy A and B.
Exactly.
It's kind of all the same. And then I think Katana is something really special, really unique, the way you guys design it. That definitely benefits a lot of users. And coming on to another side, I remember when we talked how you design it, you mentioned game theory, you mentioned psychology. Could you give me like few key points, how important other things that can back to make a really good tokenomics design?
Yeah, sure. So when you're designing your tokenomics, I think it's good to first think about like how you might think if you were a central banker, and how you might think if you were designing the monetary policy of a country. What kind of taxes would you implement on what kind of activities? What kind of activities would you subsidize? How would you stimulate part of the economy without basically weakening other parts of the economy? that would be with runaway inflation or runaway kind of subsidies, for example. So think about these things. And of course, it's much simpler in the tokenomics with the tokenomics lens because you're not designing monetary policy for a society, but rather just like a very small kind of a financial game kind of thing, which is very discrete. It does interact with other tokens though. So with that same lens of like central bank and monetary policy, you could think about like, okay, if you're running this country and you have other countries with their own tokens, then you can put that FX lens on a bit and think about those interactions. So that has been pretty useful for me to think about actually when designing these things.
So yeah, because I was super amazed. I haven't had a chance to meet that many people in the industry that do tokenomic design, and how you learn all the things you're interested in, combining all that to design Katana is like, yeah, that's like impressive, Alex.
Hey, thank you.
So coming down to our live stream, the content is powered by Polkadot and NounsDAO. I have one question for Alex: how can the legacy layer one like Polkadot can benefit from the Katana yields?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think it would be pretty cool if some highly yield-bearing Katana receipt tokens were bridged to Polkadot and used in DeFi over in Polkadot land. I think that would be pretty cool. Would love to see some cross-pollination there.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna, after this content, we're gonna shoot some message to the BD side.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I remember you also mentioned you worked in Mental. There was some DAO governance that you in touch. How do you feel about NounsDAO? Because they have the 1 noun a day model, how they do the NFT 1 noun a day. As a tokenomic designer, like how do you feel about this type of model?
I think the nounish model is like, it's honestly pretty cool. And when crypto is so young still, DeFi, NFTs even younger. I mean, the nounish model is proven to be very lindy, right? People are still bidding most days, every day, and nouns are still being sold. Treasury is still being developed. Honestly, I think it's cool. Like, you know, this model is like a kind of steady kind of cultural thing. It just keeps on going. Honestly, it's a really cool design. I've been watching it for a long time now.
Side question here: is there many other type of token design that you can share some insights with me, like other than this Nouns one and then the way you design? Is there any interesting tokenomic design you found that, oh wow, that's impressive?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the vKAT design is very heavily based off Andre Cronje's Solidly model, which is same as what Aerodrome was inspired from. This design I find it to be very interesting, right? Because he clearly identified the value leakage in the curve model and determined various interventions that would somewhat fix this model. I think if people are interested, they could look at basically Aerodrome doesn't have the best docs, but there are docs of other VE33 dexes out there where you can, of various kind of flavors. The high level value flow on that design is very cool. I think people should probably understand where that came from as well. Like look at like Curve, that was just that before there was Curve, there was no VE, right? And that's kind of started this whole thing. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that came out of that. It wasn't perfect. And indeed we see that Michael from Curve, he's removed various mechanisms from that was in VE Curve from VE YB, the yield basis token. But I think those two are pretty key for understanding why certain designs do and don't work. As we see like token design changes very rapidly. With each iteration, it's informed on what has happened before. Like, we deploy things, we see how they work in prod, and then we learned, now we try something else, and then it's an improvement on that. So yeah, I think those two are a great place to spend some time.
Right. So yeah, like just you said that to see why this thing work or why this one does not work. But then if we back to talk about nouns, how the NFT models like nouns can implement in Katana, is that gonna work?
Yeah, I think it would be very synergistic. You would have the nounish model on Katana, where the treasury is deployed in DeFi in a way which benefits the the token holders. So it'll be some kind of like, maybe there's a way of like staking your noun, therefore you get a share of the treasury yields. The treasury, right? The treasury, it might have been done before, I think, but or something similar where like then the staked noun holders could vote for various like for where the treasury would be allocated, and therefore
like the proposal, like to see where the
exactly, maybe there's like maybe 10 different whitelisted destinations where the staked noun holders could basically vote for where the treasury will be deployed. And then you kind of get into a situation where protocols themselves are probably wanting to hold the nouns because then they can vote for the treasury to be deployed into their own protocol. Could be an interesting thing. I would love to see it.
Oh, yeah, that's really nice suggestion actually. Yeah. So then back to like back to Katana. Like, what's you guys? What's the action plan now? Like, let's say the following 6 months.
Yeah, sure. So we have TGE coming up, so that'll be quite soon. And along with that, we have the vKAT, the launch of vKAT. And so after that's all live, we'll continue to grow the vKAT ecosystem, meaning vKAT holders will be able to emit to more destinations and receive fees from more destinations. That's top of mind right now.
Right. Handling TGE is such a crazy, difficult, heavy workload, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
The coming months.
Yeah.
Then what about in 5 years? What success will look like for Katana?
Yeah, so I think in 5 years, success would basically look like a highly yielding vKAT, which is funded from real revenues from the chain, from the applications on the chain. We would see various very simple single-sided entry points for lending or various vaults that a institution of any size could come in, deploy, and receive sustainably high yields because of the various mechanisms of Katana, as well as sustainably deep liquidity. Again, supported by both chain and liquidity, as well as the sustainable revenue of the chain.
Right. That was quite a nice plan. Like, then basically how Katana will be looking like for institution in 5 years.
I think we would see Katana being used more and more by institutions as just like a very safe place to park capital and receive just high yields on their stables or high yields on their ETH, for example, where you don't really need to think too much. The system is well proven and battle tested and consistently provides returns that one doesn't need to think about too much because it's just like spitting out real yield rather than like a bunch of different random tokens that you got to then claim and accounting and et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So like for the builders in the industry, right? What's your advice on designing a system that for any project that can survive more than one cycle?
Yeah, I think you just need to think about sustainability from day one. This needs to be a part of like everything you do. Like it's got to, I think too many projects in the ecosystem are, they're cool, but they just don't think about sustainable, like how you're going to survive the bear market. How are you going to survive 2 bear markets, right? How are you going to survive like, things, we've just seen a bunch of crazy stuff happen in the industry over the last like few weeks, right? Like this happens all the time. So how are you going to survive this? It needs to be baked into your design from the beginning. So that would be some advice.
That was a really nice value share, Alex. I really appreciate you coming up here. And is there anything you want to share more before we end the live stream today?
I would just encourage everyone to come check out Katana. Participate in the ecosystem, deploy some capital, earn some high yields. The yields are still very good despite market conditions. So, yeah.
Okay. Cheston, Alex, it was a nice chat.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.